Hey guys, Pretzelman945 here. Welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm gonna be doing another big list update, which for some strange reason, apparently just happens to coincide with a trend I've been doing every 2 years. Because I updated this list back in early 2023, and this list is also like some of the first videos that I made when my channel started in January of 2021. Um, Obviously the date on those videos isn't going to reflect that because I made all my videos public in 2023, but um that list is my top 30 movies of all time. And I don't know like how many part this like update to the list is going to be, but I'm sort of hoping that it's gonna be a little bit less than the previous one because like I was just looking at this earlier and I only did a top 20 last time, but I ended up making like four different videos on that, and if possible, I'd like to make it a bit more concise than that. Hopefully, I can kind of contain my yapping a little bit, though I do love all of these movies a lot, so that might be that might be kind of a difficult task. But um, without further ado, let's get into the list. So at number 30 is Howl's Moving Castle. And Howl's Moving Castle, I've mentioned it multiple times on this channel before. Howl's Moving Castle is my favorite Studio Ghibli movie. Tale of Princess Kaguya is a close second. Did it rank in my anime, like the massive anime ranking that I did last June? I don't remember. It was number 48. Okay. Number 48 my anime ranking. Number 30 in the movie ranking. And I love how much imagination and whimsy and just creativeness, like mostly just imaginativeness to the world that there is here. Like there's just so many bizarre and crazy concept that happen in this movie that just make it feel like such a unique experience, all while having a very, very good main romance plot line between Howl and Sophie. And and of course, like the animation to reflect that is just absolutely stunning. And every time I watch this movie, I gain a deeper appreciation for it. Honestly, it might go higher in the rankings at some point, but for now, it's topping off the top 30. The number 29 is what, in my opinion, what is by far the best Indiana Jones movie, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Um, I like Raiders of the Lost Ark, though I do think it has some issues. Temple of Doom is mid as fuck, and Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade is by far the best one. Because in my opinion, this movie has like easily the most interesting sort of main plot focus for a thing that Indy is going after. Like the idea of the Holy Grail to me personally is just way more interesting than the concepts of finding the Temple of Doom and its treasure inside, or finding the stuff with the lost ark. Um, so immediately, like whenever I rewatch this movie compared to other Indiana Jones movies, I'm immediately more invested into the plot. Also, this is the movie that has by far Indy's best character development because Sean Connery plays his dad, and And their relationship is very interesting. It's not particularly deep, but it's like enough to create quite an interesting character conflict for Indy. And also there's fucking Nazis in this movie, and like, when you mix together Nazis and Indiana Jones, I think it's just a guaranteed entertaining formula. So yeah, I love this movie. Easily the best Indiana Jones movie. And number 28 is a classic which I loved watching a bunch as a kid. That is Jurassic Park. Um, I don't know how much I can really explain about this movie that has not already been said ad nauseum by a lot of people, but like the concept of dinosaurs and a park for dinosaurs in the modern age is just really fucking cool. And Steven Spielberg is just a genius at directing, and like everything with the animatronics and the effects of the dinosaurs back when this released in 1993 is just nothing short of revolutionary for the time. And even though the plot structure is incredibly simplistic, what with them mostly just having to escape the threat of the T Rex once the park goes into haywire, it is a formula that I really like. And I have not watched any other Jurassic Park movies or Jurassic World movies because I don't really feel like I need to. Like this movie just well, aside from the fact that I hear very mixed things about a lot of the other movies, which kind of puts me off a little bit. There also is just like for me, there's no reason to really watch them when just the original movie is so solid and good. Um, the number 27 and one of my and my personal favorite like pure Disney not Pixar movie is Aladdin. Um and this has been my favorite ever since I was a little kid. It's honestly kind of close between Aladdin and Lion King, but most days I'm putting Aladdin ahead just because I have slightly more fun when I'm watching Aladdin, whereas Lion King is in general a more serious, a more darker movie. Um, but both are absolute masterpieces. Um, and I love all the charm and the story to this movie. I think Aladdin is a very endearing main character. He has a very wholesome romance with Jasmine, which I think actually feels like a proper romance. And there is actual chemistry there, which is like more than I can say for a lot of other Disney princess romances, but also I think Jasmine is just a generally much more interesting character than a lot of other Disney princesses. Jafar is a very good villain just because his presence is just revolting and it gives you the creeps the entire time, especially because like Jasmine is a 16-year-old and I'm genuinely looking this up. He's depicted as early to mid 40s, and Jasmine is 16, which like when I rewatch Aladdin as an older adult, it really really amplifies the creep factor for that reason. Um and yeah, I mean the genie as Robin Williams as the genie as like his best role ever in contention with Mrs. Doubtfire, of course. Um, but like I would still say it's probably my favorite Robin Williams role of all time. He just absolutely nails it. That whole character, and it's easily the most iconic part of the movie. Aladdin is just an extremely fun movie that I just always have a blast with. Speaking of movies I have an absolute blast with, number 26 and my second favorite comedy movie of all time is Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Um, And Ferris Bueller's Day Off, I don't even know where to start with this movie. It's such a simple idea, and yet the amount of ridiculous shit that is able to be packed into this movie is just on a scale that like I would find unbelievable if I hadn't watched the movie multiple times because I love it so much. Um, like he like invents this robot thing which like acts as a decoy, and he has voice playback, and like he goes to a parade and a fancy restaurant where he fakes a reservation, and and then there's that whole debacle with like his friend's fancy car and all that shit. And just the entire like course of the movie is so absurd for such a simple idea that it is just a brilliant comedy movie. And number 25, and my favorite no, second favorite Pixar movie, sorry, is Toy Story 3. And this is definitely my favorite Pixar sequel, because Toy Story 3, when did I make a video about this? I remember I made a video, yeah, back in like October, because that was the most recent time when I rewatched it with family, and like every Pixar movie, it really does hit different as an adult. Like, it was a bit of a tangent, but I rewatched Finding Nemo last night because I also had dinner with my family. And that movie was just way better on rewatch because there were so many more little details that I understood as an adult. And this definitely applies to Toy Story 3. Uh because with every Pixar movie, there's always those little bits of humor and like tiny references that you don't notice until you're an adult. Um, but Toy Story 3 in particular, um, it's got such a good theme, and I think it's got easily my favorite theme out of any Toy Story movie, with like this idea of leaving college and or going to college, sorry, and leaving home, and like even if you're like me where you don't go to college far away, it's still a big adjustment. And obviously in Andy's case, it's clear that he was going to go somewhere far away because he was moving all of his stuff out. um And comparing that experience to my own life, I gained much more of an emotional resonance to this movie. But also like the way that it acts as a wrap up on all of the character arcs um within the trilogy is just fantastic. Also, in my opinion, well, not only is Lotso by far the best villain out of any Toy Story movie, like he has such an interesting motivation for a stuffed bear that's used to smell like strawberries. He's an extremely well written villain for being a stuffed bear in a Toy Story movie. But also, in my opinion, this movie has the best humor out of any of the Toy Story movies. And I'm not just saying that because of the fact that I understand more of the adult humor on the way back on like rewatch as I'm older, um but just like even as a kid, I thought that this was the funniest Toy Story movie because I feel like the jokes in this movie are just they're just written funnier than either Toy Story 1 or 2. Um and number 24 is Gladiator. Now, Gladiator is a hard movie to talk about. Without me sort of spoiling a lot of the movie, which is what I tend to do on this channel a lot with a lot of my videos. In fact, I probably spoiled a lot of the plot from some of these movies already, but with Gladiator, it's hard to talk about because the best part of Gladiator by far is the way that it manages to construct a single scene and make use of so many different elements, such as the acting and the cinematography and the action and the music peaking at the right moments and the sound effects, all to create some of the most compelling um and just incredibly and best put together scenes of any film I've ever seen, really. Like the way that Gladiator manages to combine all of these already great elements into like very specific scenes to just truly heighten the power of those scenes beyond a lot of scenes in a lot of other movies is um it's something that I haven't really seen many other movies able to do, even in this top 30 list of my favorites of all time. Um, and I did make a video on Gladiator like a year and a half ago or something like that, maybe a little bit longer than that. Um, and if you have seen the movie and you want like scene examples of what I'm talking about, I would recommend going to watch that video because I'm pretty sure I do go into specifics in that video, but um because it's been a long time since I watched it. I can't exactly remember specifics very well, but that's by far the best element of Gladiator, but it's also kind of hard to talk about because I don't remember it very well. Hmm. Number 23 is the Violet Evergarden movie. Now, um, again, I need to look at my anime ranking to see where I actually end up ranking this. Feel like it was very, very high. Yeah, it was number 18 with the movies and shows included. To be completely honest, I don't remember what I said about the Violet Evergarden movie in that video. Um, but why this movie is ranked so high for me in this like, being in my top 30 movies of all time is because it's it's like the perfect conclusion to the series that I didn't even know that I really needed. Because Violet Evergarden as a show was already a masterpiece in its 13 episode run, what with Violet going on just an absolutely beautiful and masterfully done character arc of discovering her memories and finding her own definition of love and having to confront her past. Um and like this movie, you know, it's such a simple idea. Like, say that Major Gilbert is actually still alive and have the potential prospect of them reuniting. It's such a simple idea because it's based on what Violet's core desire was throughout the entire 13 episode run of the show. And yet, it just worked so goddamn well. Because in my opinion, I think that the movie is able to give Major Gilbert a very, very fascinating character arc of this simply deep regret over his actions in war and what his actions and how that extends to how he feels like he didn't um give Violet enough of a life to live. And and I have seen some criticism for this movie where people say that like Major Gilbert's art doesn't feel enough or it doesn't feel justified. And I never understood that, to be honest, because I think that his arc of regret is personally extremely captivating. And Violet, like, once she finds out that he is still alive, her sheer desperation to literally basically give everything up to go and reach for that prospect, it doesn't downgrade the character development that she went through throughout the series, and yet it also remains true her core desire to being with him. Like that's all that she wants. And like they have so many just incredible moments together, like when they're talking through the door and stuff like that. And then when they finally reunite at the end, it is just one of the most satisfying romantic conclusions in all of fiction, in my opinion. Um, mhm. At number 22, and this is my favorite Pixar movie, um, is Cars. Now, a lot of people, I get the sense online, really are not huge fans of Cars as a movie. Um, at least based on all the rankings I see, I normally see Cars get a B tier if someone rates it pretty highly. Most of the time, I see it around the C tier. And it always makes me sad because Cars was my favorite movie as a very little kid. It came out when I was a year old, and of course, I have a lot of nostalgia for a ton of old Pixar movies, like Monsters Inc., Finding Nemo, Incredibles, Wall-E to a certain extent, but like Cars was the one that I watched the most. And Cars to this day is one of my most watched movies across my entire lifetime, if not the number one spot. Because I watched this hundreds of times as a kid. That's how much I just genuinely loved it. And it's been among my favorite animated movies for a long time now. Um, and I love, and to this day, I love the extremely simple story structure of Lightning McQueen being this racer that, he discovers the value um, of humility by being in Radiator Springs, making friends with innocent people, realizing that racing is not all there is to life. And even though it is an extremely simplistic story structure and character development structure, I think that it's just one that is executed so well, like possibly the best out of any Pixar movie to me, because it's just something that works. It's a simple structure that works, and there is so much charm to every car related aspect of the film because that's just the Pixar magic. It's just the Pixar formula at work. They're able to take these very unique concepts and just apply so much creativity to them. And if it's for those reasons that Cars will probably always be my favorite Pixar movie of all time. At number 21 is A New Hope. So obviously a big video that I did in 2025 was um the video of where I rewatched all the Star Wars movies for May the 4th. And I kind of made my new ranking on them, and my final conclusion from that video was that original trilogy is the best. and they're absolutely on top. Those three are the best Star Wars movies, and as such, these placements are reflected in this list, with 20 being Return of the Jedi, respectively. So I'm just going to talk about both of these sort of at the same time. Um, A New Hope is like just a amazing um talk about simple story structures that are just executed amazingly well. Because, Luke is this he's he's this young boy who, like, even though 19 is not really a young boy in my opinion, but let's just call it a young boy for the sake of how he acts in the film. um he just like, I found it much easier than I remembered, really, to empathize with Luke's character. Maybe that's because I'm also 20 years old, but I I found his character very, like, easy to empathize with, perhaps because it is rather simplistically written. Um and then, like, Return of the Jedi, it's hard to talk about this without when Empire Strikes Back is a lot higher on this list, but well, I'll make it work. It's and then, like, he it feels like he has such an amazing character conclusion in Return of the Jedi, with his relationship with Vader, and how he, despite, faltering between light and dark, he ultimately commits to the light side. Um, and Luke's entire journey is just extremely powerful. And I mean, like, you know, a lot of these other things are just sort of hard for me to talk about because, like, it's Star Wars. And Star Wars is my second favorite piece of fiction of all time. Behind Attack on Titan, of course. And it used to be my number one before I watched Attack on Titan, and I'm like, rewatching these movies, I just remembered so many things about why I loved Star Wars so much. Because I watched A New Hope for the first time when I was 7 years old, and so I have been a Star Wars fan for almost 14 years. Um, which is just crazy because, like, you know, it's kind of hard to explain at a certain point everything that I just love about Star Wars, especially within the original trilogy. But it's like, it's just that damn good. Um, and number 19 is Fellowship of the Ring, and Fellowship of the Ring is just an incredible starter, in my opinion. And, like, my opinion on this film has improved even more because in 2025, I showed these movies to my sister for the first time, and she absolutely loved all of them. And Fellowship of the Ring in particular, like, her reaction to that was just, it made me appreciate the film all the more, as just how peak of a movie it is, and it's only the very first one in the trilogy. Um, and I hear a lot of people say that Fellowship of the Ring is the best Lord of the Rings movie, and, like, I can't, even though I think that Return of the King is leagues better, as will be reflected by it being much higher in this list. Same thing with Two Towers. I can't even fault that criticism because it's like the most solid formula of them all. It's the most solid, simple structure, and yet it works. It creates extremely compelling characters. It really does. By far the best feat of Fellowship of the Ring is the incredible work that it does in terms of introducing the very complex world of Middle Earth. Um, and in particular, like, the opening prologue with Galadriel explaining the sort of history of the last alliance of men and elves and stuff like that. It's literally, like, probably the most impressive introduction exposition dump of any film ever made, because there was so much work that had to be done in terms of establishing all of these crucial elements that are like in terms of the actual Fellowship of the Ring book are very gradually laid out by Gandalf as he's talking to Frodo. But obviously, that kind of thing would not work for the movie adaptation, and it's for reasons like that which I think the movie is better than the book for Fellowship of the Ring. Um, and the way that it's edited very concisely, the fact that there is a perfect amount of action to go along with the exposition being told is just absolutely masterful. And it's by far the most impressive feat of this movie, in my opinion. And number 18, and the greatest comedy movie of all time, is Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Um, so if Ferris Bueller's Day Off is my second favorite because there's just absurd shit happening despite having a simple plot structure. This movie is just incredible because it has even more absurd things happening and there is basically next to no real plot structure. Um like the whole idea of Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table finding the Holy Grail only appears halfway through the movie, and before that, it's vaguely just following him around as he recruits the Knights of the Round Table. And I guess there is some kind of a plot structure there, but it's also not, it's also like an extremely loose one, which just plays into the complete absurdity of every single scene of this movie. And that's what is amazing about it, is just the fact that every single scene has just completely absurd, ridiculous shit, which is made even funnier by the extremely low budget that this movie had. And also the fact that every time I watch this movie, I notice some new absurd little detail, which makes me find it even funnier than I did before. And number 17 is Terminator 2, which I just watched for the first time a few weeks ago. I talked about it in that video I made of how I watched four movies in a day and I reviewed them all. And Terminator 2 was by far the best one that I watched because it was just absolute masterpiece. Again, this is another one of those movies where I don't really know what I could say that has not already been said ad nauseum by many, many people over the many decades that it has been a movie that exists. But this movie is just a perfect sequel. It adds a new element to Sarah Connor's character and this idea of dealing with regret and sort of how that relates to her relationship with her son is just extremely compelling. And of course, regarding her son, John Connor, it's especially I feel like in the 80s, it was very, very difficult for child actors to be compelling in like as the mainstay of a film. And yet John Connor is like a perfect representation of teenager energy, especially what I would imagine it to be like during the 80s, not like I am during that time, but it's what I would imagine that teenager energy to be like during the 80s, and yet, um, despite being a kid character, he never feels like he is annoying or overbearing. It's like this perfect mix of seriousness and understanding the gravity of the situation and feeling like John Connor is able to act like a normal teenager. And I think that that balance is extremely impressive that it was just hit so well. And speaking of the Terminator himself, um the simple idea to change it around to where there's this new unit which is hunting, keeping that element consistent, but then the Terminator from the old movie this time is a protector. It's just such an interesting idea because, like, there's that immediate distrust between Sarah Connor um and the Terminator, and But then, of course, that trusting relationship that's formed and sort of the bond that's formed between them, and how he ends up acting as a pseudo father figure to him when John's father doesn't really exist because he died in Terminator 1. It's just a brilliant follow up in every way. And then his sacrifice at the very end was just incredible. And man, this has also got to be one of the best action movies ever made because there is so much action in this movie that it takes up like two-thirds of the movie, which just I was not really expecting that because obviously like the first movie is an incredible action movie, but Terminator 2 has way more action and it's just incredible how it managed to incorporate all of these elements into one sort of thing. Because like there is so many like insanely action-packed sequences from almost the very beginning of the movie to like a little bit past halfway and then an insanely action-packed third act of the movie. Um which like and despite the fact that there is so much action in this movie, the movie also has, in my opinion, immaculate pacing because it knows exactly the right moments when to slow down and when to insert another extremely high octane action sequence. And and just like how absurd these action sequences get and like the lines the Terminator says and like all the insane weapons shit and explosions and crazy truck car chases. It's just so fucking awesome. Um the Terminator 2 is just a masterpiece of a movie, genuinely. And um if you have seen Terminator 1 for some reason, or but not Terminator 2, what are you even doing with your life? Obviously, watch both movies because they're both incredible, but Terminator 2 is way better, and it's just one of the best sequels ever made. Okay. Sorry, apologize for the cut. I had to get some water because this video is already 37 minutes and we're only at number 16 on the list. Speaking of number 16, this is where the putiness of Christopher Nolan begins to enter the list because at number 16 is The Dark Knight. And The Dark Knight, again, this is another one of those films where I don't know what I can say that hasn't already been said. The Joker is a masterpiece of a villain. Heath Ledger deserved the Oscar, one of the most deserved Oscars for any performance, in my opinion. The Joker is a perfect villain, and the way that he ends up being proven right by the end of the movie is just absolute cinema. Um, um, Two Face, slash the city, mayor is, in my opinion, the best character of this movie, and the fact that that plays into the Joker being proven correct is just masterclass. Um, and Batman's character is really, really interesting. I'm not much of a Batman guy personally, but I think that like the sort of simplicity of his portrayal while still having a lot of clear emotional depth to him, the contrast in which that's portrayed is extremely well done in my opinion and makes Batman a very compelling main character in this movie, despite the fact that he's not even on like I'm pretty sure the Joker has more screen time than Batman himself. Um and number 15 is Captain America and the Winter Soldier. And talk about another one of the best sequels of all time, in my opinion, is definitely this movie because I feel like this movie is sort of like Terminator 2 was to Terminator 1. This movie is a perfect sequel to the first Captain America because it sets in modern day. So there's an immediate conflict sort of created with his need to adjust to the modern day ideas and like modern concepts of society and not really agreeing with how field and the US government sort of deals out justice and their way of threat prevention being through massive weapons in this modern day. And so that immediate conflict is very, very interesting. And And Bucky's character, like the decision to bring Bucky's character back as the Winter Soldier, um, and that being exposed as like a crucial flaw in Nick Fury's knowledge when he's supposedly being this like um very smart character, which he definitely is throughout the course of the movie. But like, when he's seemingly killed and then he shows up again, despite seeming to have been hunted down, um, and killed. Like it does such a good job of creating tension with all those things, and bringing back Bucky as the Winter Soldier is something completely believable because we saw he was about to be experimented on by Arnim Zola in the first movie, and also the way that Arnim Zola plays into the plot of this movie, I feel like isn't really talked about enough because it's super interesting in my opinion the role that he plays as like this, like it makes sense as the brainiac character that he was, he would have made a backup like that, and he is the real reason that Hydra managed to survive. Um, and all of those elements coinciding together just makes for um like like I've been saying, like an incredible sequel because it follows up on all of these elements. Like you introduce a new conflict for Cap, you do something new with Bucky. The Winter Soldier concept is very, very interesting, and you bring back Hydra in a very, very interesting way. Um, and even though this movie used to be in the top 10, I actually drastically rearranged, like I completely rearranged the 10 to 15 section of this list from what it was before. So that's like the biggest change that I really made to this list. Um, and number 14 is a tie. It's one of two ties on this list. Um, and that is a tie between Into the Spider Verse and Across the Spider Verse. I genuinely, for the life of me, cannot pick between these two movies. Because both of them are absolute masterpieces. Like Into the Spider Verse is just a it's the best Spider-Man movie. Like these are the best Spider-Man movies ever because Miles Morales has always been my favorite version of Spider-Man personally because I always thought that his character was the most interesting, and I think that everything that they do with him in this movie, such as struggling to like handle his powers, is just amazing. But so like the idea of introducing all these different Spider-Mans from different alternate dimensions is just from entering into the Spider Verse is just really goddamn cool. And then Kingpin is like an insanely good villain. I don't feel like he's talked about nearly enough because He is just um he has this deep and intense family motivation to get them back, and the fact that that is what's motivating his entire sort of goal is just incredible because it just shows this strength of character to him. And it makes him an extremely sympathetic villain that is extremely well written, in my opinion. But also, like, the execution of the other Spider-Man is just amazing because they all sort of go on their own character arc, and it's just amazing how that all tends to coincide. And then, to be honest, Across the Spider-Verse, I don't really remember as much in terms of the specific, like, plot and characters because it came out like 2.5 years ago. But, like, it's tied with Into the Spider-Verse for a reason because, like, the idea of introducing so many more Spider-Man, it never feels overwhelming to me. Uh, because each one, there's like kind of toned down ideas in terms of like the specific ideas. And yes, it sort of feels a bit slower because it's the middle chapter of the trilogy of Miles Morales in Spider-Verse movies, but it still just feels like a absolute masterpiece from start to finish. Okay, sorry for that other cut. Had to go blow my nose real quick. All right, moving on to number 13, The Shawshank Redemption. Um, again, this is another one of those movies that I really don't know what I can say or what I can continue to say that has not already been said by me in previous videos, but also just a lot of people over the several decades that it has existed. And like, just the whole journey of this movie, like the main character of this movie, whose name I unfortunately forget, um, is to like one of the most in-depth and complex movie main characters I've ever seen because his entire journey from start to finish in the movie, as he goes through life in prison and how the prison life revolves around him is just there's nothing like this movie that has ever been made and probably will never be made, in my opinion. Like Morgan Freeman's character is also just absolutely like it's his most famous role for a goddamn reason. I think just everything about his performance is just an absolute masterpiece. Um yeah, it's fucking Shawshank Redemption. I don't. That's all I got for you. It's a masterpiece. Although I will say the prison warden is also an incredible villain. I do want to point that out because I don't hear that talked about enough. Well, number 12 is The Matrix. This movie is just one of the most awesome movies ever made. It's such a cool idea. Um and concept and how it works. And after I uh watched through all of Ghost in the Shell, like you know, seeing the many influences that Ghost in the Shell has on the Matrix is just super cool, and honestly elevates the my opinion of the film even more than before. Even though I moved it uh 2 spots down from where it was, or one spot down maybe. It's the number 12 spot. I obviously love this movie a lot. Um, and and oh boy, we're starting to reach rough territory. It's been beginning to be a long video. But like seeing the ways that Ghost in the Shell influences the Matrix, but also the way that the Matrix sort of takes those concepts and makes it unique in its own way while still having a lot of the same cyberpunk vibes and and inspirations and whatnot is just really really cool, and the action and CG effects for being 1999 film are just all absolutely incredible to me. um and yeah, this movie is just awesome. um and number 10, and the last of two ties on this list, is a tie between Kung Fu Pandas 1, 2, and 3. I have been. This is another series, similar to Cars, although I didn't watch as much as Cars. This is another like animated movie series that I have been a huge fan of since childhood. Uguay is one of my favorite characters in fiction. Um, I love Poe's journey across all three of the movies. And in fact, the reason why all three of them are at a tie is because I genuinely believe that all three movies are equally as good as one another. So obviously the first one is an incredible like hero's journey story where Poe has to discover what the secret ingredient is, and the fact that there is no secret ingredient, and the fact that, and the simple message of him believing in himself, with Tai Lung being a incredible villain to be the inverse of Poe in that way because of the fact that he believed in himself as Shifu pushed him to do, and he felt like he was betrayed and failed because of that, thus leading to his very understandable anger. And then there comes the second movie, which is obviously regarded as the best by many people. Um, and it's easy to see why, because like Poe's exploration of the past is like by far his best character moments, and like learning his past with his mom and his dad, and how he came to be owned by Mr. Ping, and having to face Shang in the past, and how Shang is like this inverse of him in terms of like feeling like he was failed by his parents versus Poe believing in what his parents did for him, and the whole yin yang concept again is just amazing. And then we get to the third movie, which by far has the most simple plot structure, and yet Kai is still, in my opinion, a very, very effective villain because he's the inverse of Poe again in the way that he was not able to find the true value of tea because he decides to only take life, and due to the fact that he became jealous of the power when he felt like his friendship was not being properly honored with him, by him and Oogway being able to receive the same share of power, and I guess train the same values that they did. Um, it makes it a very interesting inverse because Poe is having to struggle with the concept of his family again, and like making friends with the Panda Village and stuff like that. And it's that inverse dynamic created because Poe is able to find value in the use of tea, and in the value of his friendships. Even if that means that it isn't exactly equal dynamics all the time. But also just like in my opinion, um, in place of the first two movies being potentially grander in scale and doing more with Poe's character, what this what or not grand what this movie is grander in scale compared to those movies being like less about exploring Poe's character as much, because they go to the spirit realm. There's the massive final battle between the giant dragon and Kai and all that stuff, and I just think that all of that is awesome, and it feels like it's really the culmination of like even if it doesn't explore Poe's character as much, it feels like Poe in the third movie is sort of it's like the culmination of everything that he's really learned across all three movies, which just makes it an absolutely amazing conclusion. And and that's why I think that all three movies are equal, and I love Kung Fu Panda as a whole, which is why it's the number 10 spot. At number 9 is my favorite Star Wars movie of all time, The Empire Strikes Back. And a lot of the same things that I talked about with A New Hope and Return of the Jedi earlier in this video do still apply here because, like, again, it's another example of like a perfect sequel because it does something new with Luke's character, with him like having to learn more of the Force through Yoda and having to rely less on emotion like he does, which is something that, it is his like looking to the horizon is the whole point of A New Hope. And yet he has to learn to grow beyond that and learn additional wisdom. Um and he is able to very much do that, and the true test comes when, of course, the most iconic plot twist in movie history, the uh I am your father twist, just completely shatters his mentality, and he has to work to strengthen that sort of thing. And the way that that is done is just amazing. It's just peak. It's like the absolute peak of Star Wars. And I don't feel like there's much else that I can really say about this. Like, Yoda is one of my favorite characters in fiction, and there's a reason why the Yoda scenes are like my favorite. And I have I Am Your Father as the second just because I love Yoda so much. Um and yeah, that's basically it. It's like the peak of Star Wars, and I don't really know what else I can say beyond that. Number 8 is Forrest Gump, and that's been a mainstay in my top 10 movies for several years now. Probably like 5 or 6 years, I want to say, if not even longer than that. Um, what I love most about this movie, thinking back on it, is the journey aspect of it, because the journey of Forrest through this movie is just truly incredible. Like, he starts out as being this crippled kid who isn't able to get around very much. He's not very academically intelligent, and that immediately sort of makes him endearing in a way. Um and Sally Field gives maybe one of the best performances of all time, in my opinion, as his mother. Um, and just their loving and caring relationship across Forrest's entire life is just absolutely amazing. Um, his romance with Jenny across the whole movie is one of my favorite romances in all of fiction. It's so sweet and wholesome how like um Jenny really relies on Forrest, and Forrest, not really understanding it, is just really happy to have a friend. And then he sort of realizes the deeper values of love that he has for Jenny much later in life. And Jenny has an extremely complicated character arc, which I feel like um, when I rewatch Forrest Gump now that I'm much older, I'm able to appreciate a lot more the intricacies of such as the fact that she has to struggle with drugs and is living literally paycheck to paycheck in terms of like at certain points in terms of like the fact that she's doing like nude work and stuff like that. And then the concept of like near the end of the movie, the fact that they finally settled down and Forrest has a son and all of that, and then very topical of the time, like he ends up getting AIDS, is just super, super uh, interesting. Like, and then there's so many things I didn't even mention about Forrest's own journey because, of course, like he becomes a Vietnam War veteran, where he meets probably my personal favorite character in the movie, Bubba. Um, and and um sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. And we're at an hour in, and so it's starting to get a struggle to continue. Um uh like their friendship is just so wholesome and innocent, and like um what is his name? Um oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot his name. Mm, what is his name? Lieutenant Dan, that's right. Yeah, 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 yeah. And then like obviously that whole part of the movie also introduces Lieutenant Dan, who goes on an incredible character arc of like having to accept that his life actually has value, and the fact that he didn't die and sacrifice himself for his country doesn't mean that he doesn't have a purpose to play in life. Um, and then, of course, Forrest just continues. He becomes like a ping pong world champion. Um, he opens Bubba Gump Shrimp, which just which just becomes extremely successful, and uh, well, um, and then there's just like the conclusion to his story where he's just a father. And the entire journey of Forrest through this film is just such a wonderful thing. And the way that every other character also goes on incredible journeys throughout this film is just amazing to me. Like the characters in this film are so good. And the way that all of them encompass this journey aspect is just what I love so much about this film, because it's just so amazing watching all of them go on this journey and seeing the end of the journey by the end of the film. And in my opinion, it is probably one of the films that best encompasses a pure journey across the course of the whole movie, um, of any movie ever. Um, and number seven, and my favorite animated movie of all time, is Your Name. This is another movie that I watched with my sister in 2025, and it's just a masterpiece. Taki and Mizuha have one of the best romances in all of fiction, and the simple concept of uh like the sort of idea of um them being connected by the threads of fate, and that whole idea is just really interesting to me, and I think it just works extremely well. Um, and both of the characters are just extremely compelling the entire time. Um, and the animation is obviously drop dead gorgeous. And I think that this is really the big fluke that out of Makoto Shinkai films, which I'm otherwise not the biggest fan of. And number six is A Beautiful Mind, and this is one movie that might do the journey aspect of it potentially even better than Forrest Gump, despite how much I just praised that like a minute ago. Um, because the journey of John across this entire movie might be the best, like some of the best of any movie main character ever. Um, like, following his struggles to sort of make friends in college and the very subtle hints that like something is not quite right with him mentally. Um, to like him meeting Alicia and that being my former number one, I'm pretty sure, spot for romance and fiction, though of course that's been replaced by Giselle and Mikkel from the House and Fata Morgana now. Um um it's still probably number two, realistically, though I haven't looked at that list in a while. It's probably still number two. Like their romance is just absolutely incredible, and the way that Elise is able to help him and the way that they're able to help each other is just it's such a beautiful romantic story. And then the plot twist comes. Of course, I also love his relationship with his roommate Charles, who is my favorite character in the movie, and the reason why Paul Bettany is one of my favorite actors of all time, because his performance in that role is just absolutely incredible. Um, and then there's also the aspect of Ed Harris, who is another incredible role of like all these like tasks that he ends up having to they end up thinking that he's doing for the government as like secret agent work, and he thinks he's being hunted down. And despite the fact that this is in no way an action movie in any way, that car chase scene is like one of the most tense action scenes I've ever seen in any movie ever. Which is incredible that this movie, which isn't even close to an action movie, can manage to achieve that for me. Um, and then like, the big plot twist happens halfway through, which is like, in my opinion, possibly the best plot twist of any movie ever. Is like you find out that John has schizophrenia, and that's the reason for all the subtle hints of him seeming like an oddball, um and his like subtle genius, and like imagining Paul Bettany and Ed Harris's characters when they didn't actually exist at all in the first place, and and then like the journey that he goes on to recover from that in the second half of the movie, when they end up having a son, and like the fact that the pills end up making him dead, so he stops taking them in order to try and be better about it, but that ends up causing a relapse for him. uh just it's such a powerful journey of John's character, with so many insane elements to it that just add more and more and more to his character every time. It's like this movie, in my opinion, is the most underrated movie of all time, because I feel like I never hear people talking about this movie outside of my own family, and anyone I mention this movie to has never heard of it before. When between this and Gladiator, Russell Crowe is one of my favorite actors of all time as well. Um, which is something I didn't even mention about Gladiator. Um, okay, and number five. You're here in the top five. I will make it through this video. um, and number five is Inception. And this straight up has the coolest concept for any movie I've ever watched. The idea of like implanting dreams like implanting new ideas into dreams by entering the dreams and dreams like within dreams as well is just like it's the coolest concept of any movie I've ever watched, just straight up. And all of the character performances are just amazing. The acting is just incredible in this movie. There is so much tension, and I love all of the cast of characters in this movie. Um, and the way that the plot unfolds is just pure genius to me. Um, Inception is a fucking masterpiece, and I don't really know what else I can really say about it. Really, um, a number four is Endgame, and this is actually the biggest change is that the three and four spots were switched around in this list. Even though it's only a one spot difference, considering how much I love both of these movies, you're gonna see, um, it is a big change. To me, anyway, it's a big change. Um, but at number four is Endgame. I've talked about this movie so much on this channel. This movie is an absolute masterpiece. Like every single character gets a brilliant follow up, in my opinion, to this movie. It is like the best possible equal to Infinity War, which is the main thing I was looking for when I was in anticipation of this movie, and it absolutely blew my expectations out of the water in that aspect, and also in just like every other aspect of that. Um, it has like one of the best third acts in um all of cinema history, the best of which being the Two Towers, which I realized that I forgot to talk about. I completely skipped over that. But that was the number 11 spot. I'm gonna tangent real quick to talk about that because the Two Towers is a brilliant second chapter of Lord of the Rings, and in my opinion, that has the best third act of any movie ever. Um, Yeah, I can't believe I completely skipped over that. Oh man. Okay. Back to Endgame. Um, Absolute masterpiece. It has a brilliant time travel plot from start to finish. The differences in how Thanos is executed as a villain here and the changes in his motivation, which make him a dynamic character in this movie, are just brilliant. Once again, adding more material to why he's the best villain in fiction. Um, But like it's Endgame. It's Endgame, man. Um, so the big change that I did make is that I moved Interstellar to number three, and the main reason I did that is because a few days ago, for the first time, on New Year's Eve, in fact, I watched or I showed Interstellar to my sister for the first time, who is a huge fan of space stuff, and so I was like, okay, we got to watch Interstellar. Um, and he absolutely loved it, and that watching experience actually made me love the movie even more than I previously did. Um, which I didn't even think was really possible, but like talk about like a journey in this movie. I don't think it's quite better than A Beautiful Mind, but it's probably like the number two spot for that like uh category for me. In terms of just pure journey across the film, like Matthew McConaughey's character is just ridiculously in depth, and the idea of it being this movie that is that just takes place across the whole of um across like so many years ultimately, and like seeing all these characters extremely tragic deaths, and like it's all because of this cruel passage of time as they like go through space, and like there's so many like uh successes and setbacks and everything like that, um and like the whole idea of like making something as scientific as space and the journey through it, and like adding this idea of human perseverance and the power of love, which are extremely unscientific concepts, and just making them fuse together with the science of the space travel that they were doing so perfectly, all for the survival of humanity, is just absolute perfection in a film. And this movie, my God, I forgot how like just insanely tense so many scenes of this movie are. Like the tension building in like so many scenes of this movie are just incredible work. Um and then the ending um when Cooper manages to reunite with his daughter in extremely old age is just such a beautiful thing, and the fact that humanity was able to survive and create a planet where they survived, and like especially the whole docking sequence, the whole um section from Matt Damon's character, who is brilliant performance by the way, who betrays them, to the docking sequence, to um uh Cooper going into the black hole, is like probably the best, or like one of the greatest stretches of film of any movie ever. Because there are so many scenes in there that it's hard to pick like which one of those would go on a favorite movie scenes list of mine. Which is probably why I'm never going to make that list again, even though I have thought about it. And yeah, I just yeah. And number two is Return of the King. Um, it's Return of the King. Um, am I kind of saying this because I'm tired of recording at this point because it's been an hour and 17 minutes? Probably, but like Return of the King won, who fucking knows how many Oscars, is like the most celebrated Oscar winning film of all time and stuff like that. It's just an absolute masterpiece from start to finish. um, it's just, yeah. Um, and then, of course, still unchanged, almost 8 years later, Infinity War is still my favorite movie of all time, and I don't know if that's ever going to change for the rest of my life, to be completely honest, because every single character is just brilliantly executed in this movie. Like Thanos is the best villain in all of fiction. Iron Man has such an incredibly emotional character journey. Every character has such an emotional journey, and there are so many examples of brilliant dynamic versus static character writing in this movie. The action is all incredible. It's got like the best version of Thor in the entire MCU, in my opinion, and it's just the greatest movie of all time, in my opinion. And that, and like I said, that's probably not going to change for a long time. Um, but yeah, I somehow managed to do it all in one video. That has been my top 30 movies of all time. If you lost any part of this, as I normally say for these long ass videos, even 5 seconds, then thank you very much for watching. Let me know what your favorite movies are in the comments below. Let me know what you think of my list. But for now, uh, thank you very much for watching if you watched even a little bit of it, and I will see you later. Bye bye.